Welcome, everyone, to Family Comes First. I'm Vincent J. Russo.
And I'm Victoria Roberts-Drogin. Thank you for joining us today. On 9/11, hundreds of first responders rushed into the towers of the World Trade Center. They followed a human instinct, one that was stronger in them than in most others, to save lives, and it cost many of them their own lives.
In the aftermath of 9/11, many more sifted through the rubble day after day on the toxic pile which was unsafe to breathe, and have become desperately ill.
Today we will share the stories of these brave first responders and the resulting battles with life-threatening illnesses. Welcome to Heroes of 9/11 on Family Comes First. Joining us now is Tim Brown, a firefighter who responded to the call when the towers were hit and rushed immediately into Ground Zero. Tim, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me here.
And
Thank
it's
you.
really, truly our honor.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I guess the best place to start is at the beginning. You know, what happened that day? Where were you?
Yeah.
What did you do?
I was a New York City fireman assigned to the Mayor's Office of Emergency Management under Mayor Giuliani. Our office space was in 7 World Trade Center, so
Wow.
the first plane actually flew over the roof of our building.
Did you hear it?
I did not hear it. The power went out in our building, and then it came back up about 4 seconds later. And with my training and experience, I knew that meant something major had occurred. I just didn't know what it was. The people who were sitting facing Tower 1 could actually see it.
Wow.
And so they jumped up and ran toward me, and I actually had to stop one young woman, and like grab her by the shoulders and bring her back to reality and say what happened. And she said a plane hit the tower. So that's the first I knew of what happened. And of course, in that moment, as most of the world, I guess, or whoever was there knew, we thought it was a small plane. We didn't realize what was still to come.
Yeah. I think 1010 Win said it was a weather plane. At
Right.
that point, or they didn't know.
I guess that was what we had hoped.
Yes.
You know.
So then what happened?
I went to my car in VZ Street. My job was to be at the command post with the fire chief. And I put on my mayor's office helmet, my jacket, and my heavy boots. And I was entering Tower 1 at the plaza level. And I could start to see that it was more serious than we had initially thought. And I got inside the plaza level. I had to go down an escalator to get to the command post. And I remember very clearly that there were a lot of people evacuating the building, but they weren't running and panicking. They were all very civil. And the one thing that struck me in that moment was that for everyone that was injured, obese, pregnant, disabled, there were 4 or 5 regular office workers helping that person.
Wow.
And I saw the goodness and humanity in that moment. And I thought to myself, and this all happens in a flash, you know, I thought, no matter what happens today, we're going to be okay. And, you know, I want to come back to that later on in the story because it's such an important point to make. I went down the escalator and the lobby was full of firemen. We call it organized chaos. The firemen waiting for assignments from the chief. And I heard someone yell my name, Timmy! And I looked across the top of the crowd and I saw my best friend, Terry Hatton. Terry was the captain of Rescue 1, the elite firefighters of Manhattan. I ran over to Terry. He was 6'4", so with his helmet and his boots, he was 6'8". And we hugged. We were together every day, me and Terry. We just lived and breathed the fire department together. And he had his big Halligan, a big pry bar in his hand, and he squeezed me tight to his chest. And he kissed me right here on the cheek. And he said, I love you, brother. I may never see you again. And Terry was one of those guys who was always way ahead in the way he thought, 4 or 5 steps ahead of everyone else. And I laughed him off, but he was already running through this whole thing in his mind. Terry and I had gone to Oklahoma City together the night after the bombing, and we had been in Atlanta when the bomb went off in Atlanta at the Olympics, and we had tremendously bad emergencies and fires in New York City together that we survived together. And I just thought it was silly that he was saying that to me. And it turns out in the end it would be the last time I ever spoke with my best friend. So they went in the stairwell, as did the firemen and the cops. You know, we all know the story that they ran toward it.
Right.
343 New York City firefighters, American heroes, murdered by Islamists. 37 Port Authority police officers, American heroes, murdered by Islamists, and 23 New York City police officers. Most of those were their elite emergency services units. Same thing, American heroes. And we have a mantra that says never forget. And I'm trying to be the best voice that I can for them. So all these heroes were going up the stairwell and encouraging people out and taking care of people on the way down the stairwell and getting up as high as they possibly could.
Wow.
A fireman came running into the lobby of Tower 1 from Tower 2, the South Tower, and he was yelling that the South Tower got hit. And that was, as the world saw on television,
Right.
we were inside it, so we couldn't see that. You know?
Right, right.
So we knew immediately it was a terrorist attack in that moment. They assigned myself and Chief Donald Burns, Assistant Chief of the New York City Fire Department, to go over to Tower 2 to open up that command post. Because now not only do we have the biggest disaster in New York City's history in one tower, now we just doubled it in another tower. As Chief Burns and I ran underground to the other tower, the South Tower, we had a little conversation, and I said, "What do you need me to do, Chief?" He said, "Timmy, there's not much you and I can do." He said, "Do your best and be careful. I've ordered another 5th alarm, but it's going to take them a while to get here." That's another 250 firefighters.
And this was all to get people down.
This was all to get people down, to do the best we could to rescue. What it turned out to be is mostly getting the people out from below the point of impact. Because no one survived in the North Tower above the point of impact, and only, I believe it's 18 survived in the South Tower. They were able to get past the point of impact. When we got into the lobby of Tower 2, a civilian grabbed me, female, and she was screaming, "Someone's trapped in the elevator." And so Chief Burns and I waved at each other. I went with her, he went to the command post, and we got over to the elevator bank, and the hoistway doors were open so you could see into the shaft. The elevator car, you could just see at the top. It didn't come down all the way. So what you could see is like the people's ankles. And there were 8 or 10 or 15 people or something in there. And they were screaming. What I didn't know until recently is that elevator car had just free fell for 70 stories.
God.
Because the plane cut the cable when it came in, and the peoples were saved by the emergency brakes before it hit the pit. So they had already, these poor people had already experienced that torture of falling 70 floors.
Fear of death.
Fear, yeah, just waiting for it to explode. And so the emergency brakes stopped the car, but we couldn't get them, and they couldn't get out. The space was too small. And I couldn't think of, I was a fireman, but I didn't have any tools or equipment. And so I told people to start bringing me fire extinguishers because the elevator pit was on fire.
Oh my goodness.
With jet fuel. And they were screaming and panicking because they were getting cooked inside this elevator car. In addition, that's after they fell 70 floors. And so we tried to fight the fire the best we could. And in my frustration, I turned to my right and my shoulder hit someone. And I looked, and it was a fireman, and I looked up at the face, and it was fireman Mike Lynch from Ladder 4, who I knew. And Mike put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Timmy, I got it." And what Mike meant in those words was, I have the training, I have the experience, I have the intestinal fortitude to save those people's lives. I later told his wife that he might as well have had wings coming out of his back, because he was the angel that was going to save those lives. We got over the radio at this point. The third plane was coming in. We thought Flight 93 was coming for us. And so I left Mike with the elevator, and I went to the command post, and I found a phone that worked. I dialed 0 for operator, and I actually said to the operator to get me in the White House, because I knew we needed protection in the air above us. And she tried, and she couldn't get through. And then I said, get me the Pentagon, and she said the Pentagon's been attacked. And that's the first we knew that the Pentagon was attacked. The lobby started filling up. We finally got New York State Emergency Management. They said the fighter jets were coming fast for us to protect us. And the lobby was filling up with people who were badly injured, burned, bloody, and broken, who mistakenly thought that when they got in the lobby, they were safe. These people had come down up to 70 or 80 floors, but they were filling up the lobby, and the stairwells were getting blocked.
So now you needed to
So
move
we
them
needed to
all
move them out.
Oh.
Right.
So Chief Burns sent me to get the paramedics. I ran out across West Street. One fireman was already dead from a jumper right there on Liberty Street. And I found the paramedics, my friend Charlie Wells, on West Street, and they got their stuff together, and the 4 of us, myself and 3 paramedics, ran back, and we were running along Liberty Street on the north sidewalk in front of 3 World Trade Center, Marriott Hotel. We just rounded the corner to the adjoining 2 World Trade, the South Tower, when it collapsed. And we could hear it above us, just boom, 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 each floor collapsing on the next.
Oh my gosh.
So I know as a fireman, you can never outrun a collapse. It happens too quickly. So we ducked in next door in the Marriott Hotel, which was the Tall Ships restaurant. And it was just like this room, clear as this. And just like that, it went black. And Tower 2 fell onto to 3 World Trade Center, and 3 World Trade Center collapsed around us. I found a column to hold on to, the strongest part of the building, and my legs went up in the air, and you couldn't hear anything. The noise was tremendous. The wind trying to blow us out of the building was tremendous, and I just waited to get crushed. And I thought how unfair it was that I wouldn't be able to hold my brother again.
This is your family.
Yeah. I mean, being there and the chaos, it sounds like, that was going on, and it's in the fearlessness of everyone responding. It's just incredible.
It says something about human nature, and we have to take a quick break, but we're going to return and talk about really what made those people the people that they were, yourself included.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Family Comes First. We've been speaking with Tim Brown, a retired New York City firefighter who is at Ground Zero. And joining us now is Troy Rosasco of Turley, Hanson and Partners, and an attorney very involved with the first responders today. So thank you for joining us, Troy. And Tim, we're going to continue with your story.
Sure.
So here we are many years later, and this show is called Family Comes First. And what strikes us having listened to the story is you lost dear friends who were your family.
Yes. I'm a single guy. I don't, have children of my own. So my family, besides my mom and dad and brothers and sisters, was really the firemen. and I spent every day with them and doing things with them recreationally in addition to work. So I lost an awful lot that day. I lost 93 friends.
93.
Yeah. And my two best friends, Terry Hatton and Patty Brown,
Didn't make it.
both amazing heroes. Both of them running up the stairs in the North Tower and saving lives. You know, and they're just. I mean, they were my best friends, but they are just representative of what the firemen and cops did. The New York firemen, New York cops. Port Authority cops did that day selflessly.
Yeah.
And the other firemen who were there and survived it and started now getting sick.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm very lucky that so far I'm not sick, at least physically.
Yeah.
You know, I probably have some pretty severe PTS stuff going on, but we have a big problem now.
And I'm thrilled that Troy is here to enlighten us and give some guidance to the first responders and their families dealing with now these serious medical issues. Troy?
Thank you, Vince. First, I want to say thank you to you, Tim. You and your colleagues did just tremendous things, and we all owe a debt of gratitude to all of you.
Thank you.
What I do, Vince, is there is a law that was recently reauthorized called the James Zadroga 9/11 Health and Compensation Act.
Okay.
And we talk about sometimes where Congress doesn't do all that we hope they do. Well, this is one of the times when they got it right.
Okay.
And someone like our own Congressman Peter King and Representative Carolyn Maloney, Senators Gillibrand and Schumer really came through.
Bipartisan.
Bipartisan,
Yeah.
and they really led it through Congress. And it was a great day for American democracy because we're taking care of the heroes. There were two parts of the law. One is the World Trade Center Health Program, which gives them lifelong medical care. And that law goes on to 2090, which will essentially will take care of all responders for the rest of their lives. Pays 100% of their medical care for 9/11 related conditions. Here on Long Island, we have two great centers of excellence, one at Winthrop University Hospital and one at Stony Brook University Medical Center. There's also one in Manhattan at Mount Sinai Medical Center. And oftentimes when I talk to responders, that's the most important thing they're looking for.
Where do I go?
Where do I go for the help and the health care? Because at this juncture, many of them may have lost positions. Tim, because of the employer that you had, the New York City Fire Department, has very good health care. But there were some others, cleaners, construction workers, utility workers, who were down there who may not have the same level of health care. So this is a godsend.
So Troy, how does a first responder enroll in the program?
They should call the toll-free number for the World Trade Center Health Program. And that toll-free number is 1-888-982-4748. And they are wonderful on the other end of the phone, and they will go through the process and get you enrolled.
And help direct them. We'll put that number on Vincent's website as well.
Great.
Yeah,
As a
yeah,
resource.
absolutely.
So is it a complicated process or is it?
It's actually very, very easy.
Okay.
They take down your information. You have to establish that you're eligible.
Right.
So to be eligible, you have to have been down in the crash site area where you might have been exposed to toxins. Essentially, the crash site area is all of Lower Manhattan below Canal Street. It also includes the New York City morgue. It also includes the Fresh Kills landfill on Staten Island and the barges that also were on in Manhattan.
So this is not limited necessarily to first responders. There were people who cleaned up the site. There were many more than, I mean, the incredible bravery that happened in the immediacy.
Right. Think about Tim, who went into the Marriott And all that dust clouded all that air. Someone had to clean the Marriott afterwards. And they got also exposed to all that dust. And a person like that would be eligible for both the health program and the Victims' Compensation Fund.
Any restrictions on the health side in terms of what might be covered or not covered?
There's a list of about
Okay.
70 conditions
Okay.
that are covered. They started out primarily being aerodigestive, so things like asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, rhinitis, sinusitis. Then you also had some digestive problems, such as GERD. And now, today, unfortunately, what we're seeing the most of are cancer cases as a result of being exposed to all the toxins. And some people don't realize how bad it was down there. I oftentimes explain it as a toxic volcano because you had both buildings come down. They were filled with PCBs and asbestos, which we already know are toxins, and they were in a pile covered with jet fuel. And that jet fuel from 9/11/2001 burned on top of that pile until January or February. So you can imagine that plume of toxins that everybody down there was exposed to. And it has unfortunately created a wealth of cancerous conditions that people are dealing with today.
Yeah. Now, financial compensation, there's a second part.
That's right. That's the second part of the James Zadroga Act.
Okay.
So the first part is the World Trade Center Health Program. The second part is the 9/11 Victims' Compensation Fund. And Congress just put in an extra $4.6 billion to compensate victims and their families. So if, for instance, a person were to develop some type of 9/11 related cancer, they can apply to the Victims' Compensation Fund for compensation for either pain and suffering damages or also lost wages. So it is a very complicated program. It was set up to hopefully be done by claimants alone, but we're finding that 83% of all those who have Victims' Compensation Fund claims are choosing to obtain lawyer representation.
And that's a situation where a firm like yours would come in and be helpful. And I understand that there's a restriction on how much the lawyers are being paid,
Yes.
which is, I think, great. And I'm a
Yeah.
lawyer, and I'm happy to say that.
Absolutely.
So it's 10%.
Congress really did the right thing. Right in the law, they said lawyers can't charge more than 10%. They cap fees. Unlike personal injury lawyers who might get 33 and a third percent, they said, we want the victims
Absolutely.
to get most of this money. And that's the way it should be.
They did it right.
They did it right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank Troy for the good work you're doing, helping these families and making sure they get what they're entitled to. And most importantly, as you mentioned, the care need that's so significant.
Yeah.
And Tim, you know, I don't know if we have words to thank you and who you represent, which are all those first responders, all the people who
And their
whether-
families.
and their families
Their
that
families, yeah.
have been, you know, so horrifically affected by all of what
Thank you.
happened and the bravery that you've shown.
This is something that doesn't leave us. I know
Right.
the world in America has moved forward in it, but this is something we still live with every day, and we will till our last breath. So.
Never forget.
Yeah, and that's
I think
why we
that's it.
that's why we wanted you here today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because never forget,
Yes.
and sharing this story allows us to help never forget and to think of family, and we mourn for your loss and all the losses, thousands and
Especially
thousands
as
of
we
people.
approach the 15th
Yeah.
anniversary
Yeah.
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
up.
Yeah,
It's critical, and to share it with our children.
Thank
to
you.
remember.
yeah.
We're going to take a break, and we will be right back with Family Comes First. It is devastating to read recent studies which have reported that so many of these brave responders are now facing lung and respiratory disease and cancer.
The first responders and their families must remain up front and center in our minds and hearts. Our country needs to honor them for their service by providing them with the necessary compensation and health care they deserve. We must always remember.
Yeah, it's as Tim said, never forget. That's the message. For a list of the resources that we discussed here today and more information, please visit Vincent's law firm website at vjrussolaw.com.
Thanks to all our viewers for joining us. And remember, family truly does come first.